Hi YouTube, it's Janely, also known as Miss Be Helpful, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the difference between credit unions and major banks, which is one of the things that a lot of people have been asking me about, especially since last week when I posted a video about which savings accounts and checking accounts and which banks I actually use. But first, I just want to remind you guys that I post videos every Thursday on my channel because I think it is so important for more and more people to be confident talking about money and all things that have to do with financial literacy and personal finance. Especially when it comes to saving and investing and budgeting and all of these different things that, we don't learn in school. So when it comes to time to like actually do it in real life, a lot of people don't feel confident, don't know where to look, don't know where to start. And it can really seem confusing. So on my channel, I try to just make it real basic. I like to break these topics down in a way that's easy to understand and actually fun to learn about. Definitely, if you're the type of person who lives in a community where you mostly drive around the same area, you go to work, you live there, you're very community oriented and community based, you don't travel outside of that area a lot, and your routines are very much rotating around that specific area, then it probably makes sense for you to go with a credit union because you're always there. It's going to be easy for you to access money through those branches, and you don't have to worry about fees from traveling or the inconvenience of dealing with anything like that. If you could overlook the fact that it's not a lot of digital and online tech savvy stuff offered through credit unions, if you could like get past that and it doesn't bother you, then definitely credit unions are going to make a lot more sense because you're going to be able to get a little bit of a higher interest rate most of the time than a big bank would offer you. And so this is definitely something that I know a lot of my friends that use credit unions, they say that's the reason why they do it. And because when it's time for them to get a house or a car, they're going to have a relationship with the people at that credit union because it's more community based, community oriented, and they have an actual relationship. So they will go there and be able to talk to them and get a really good rate on, borrowing for a personal loan or a car loan or a home mortgage. So these are definitely reasons why people that are more community oriented are, it makes more sense for them to benefit from something like a credit union than a big bank. This is probably the most important, is that when it comes to insuring your money, most people always talk about FDIC insurance is so important and credit unions don't have that. But that's actually not true. Credit unions have their own form of insurance, which is exactly the same as FDIC insurance. So basically the government has two federal agencies that insure any money that has been deposited into into institutions like banks and credit unions, like both of them. But it's just slightly different. The two federal agencies that do this, one of them is the FDIC, which essentially when you have a bank or some sort of financial institution that is a for-profit institution, the money that you put there in those accounts is going to be backed and insured up to $250,000 per account per person with the FDIC insurance. So that means that there's a fund in place to make sure that if anything happens to that bank, or if the money's not there, you're going to be able to get your money back because the government is backing it through that insurance program. And then there's another federal agency called the NCUA, and through them you get the exact same deal. You're insured up to $250,000 per person per account, but it's just not through the FDIC insurance. It's through NCUA, which basically is the exact same concept. It's a fund that is put in place by a federal agency that makes sure that they're going to insure any credit unions, any deposits of cash that were put into a credit union that is, federally insured. So basically, whenever you're going to go and open an account with a credit union, you just like if you go to the bank, you need to check if that bank is FDIC insured. Same thing with the credit union. When you're going to consider a credit union for anything, you need to ask yourself, are they insured through the NCUA? You need to make sure that they have that insurance in place. And if they don't, you need to turn around and walk out the door and find another credit union that is insured by the NCUA to make sure that if anything was to happen to that credit union, if the money wasn't in your account when you needed it, that you're going to be backed by the federal government, because that's, the most secure that you can make sure that you put your money in a place that's going to be the most secure it can be. For me, I'm a kind of person that travels a lot. I was born and raised in New York City. I've always been in New York City, but then I went to Rhode Island for college, came back to New York City and do a little bit of traveling. I studied abroad in France, and recently I took a trip to Thailand. Like, I like to travel a lot. And whenever I travel, it is really inconvenient to deal with transferring money, getting access to money and things like that if you don't have a bank or an institution that kind of makes it easy for you to do that. So low fees and no foreign transaction fees, different things like that make it easy for you to use your money when you're traveling. So when it comes down to it, big banks are generally going to make it a lot easier for you just because of the simple fact that they have a lot more infrastructure, they have a lot more money, they have more scope. Like they can do more in other countries outside of America that allow people to be able to make it easy to get access to their money when they're traveling, when they're not here in the States. So for me, that was like one of the biggest reasons once I started getting a little older that I decided not to open up an account with a credit union. And the major difference for those of you guys who are not super familiar with what credit unions are, the major difference is that with a bank, it is a for-profit institution that has customers that come and get a service from the bank. They hold your money, they give you loans, they give you credit cards, all these different things. But the big difference is that with credit union, they're non-profit. So they're not looking to make profit from customers. They actually don't have customers. When you have an account with a credit union, you are a member. Credit unions have members and it's more community based. So because it's not for profit, everything that you do at the credit union, if it does create a profit for that credit union, the profits that they make go right back to the members of that community, of that credit union, in the form of like really low fees and no maintenance fees, like higher rates back. When you have an account, you earn more interest back than a regular account at a typical big bank would give you. And just like a lot of more promotional things that you don't really get when you have a big bank, typically speaking. Now, I already talked about how traveling can make it really hard to access your money when you have access to money through a credit union. But there's actually a lot of other reasons why I personally chose not to use credit unions, even though I love what they're all about. I like community banks. I like the idea that, if one person puts money in the bank, in the nonprofit, the other person who needs to borrow money would then be able to access that money. It's kind of like approaching everything like a team, right? Like a real community. And I love that. I'm all about that. I've been working at nonprofits pretty much ever since I graduated from college. I'm a nonprofit girl through and through. I'm all about that, like finding the mission and helping people instead of just trying to make profits. So in theory and the idea of a credit union versus bank, I definitely much more am supportive of credit unions. But when it comes to in practice, it's a lot harder to use a credit union because for me personally, because of the fact that a lot of times they don't have the online, the digital resources the way that big banks do. So one easy example is just the apps and the online banking, the mobile banking and the online banking features that bigger banks are able to put in place because it's expensive. It's very expensive to create something that's high tech, something that's user friendly, something that is fully functional and just easy to use on a phone or a computer. It costs a lot of money. And so for credit unions that are community based, they don't have a lot of extra profit lying around to go and pay for these technological advancements and these new features on online and mobile banking features. They don't have that kind of money to spare. Big banks do because they have all these profits. And so it is a little bit of a disadvantage, which is kind of unfair that credit unions are providing the same exact service that banks do. You could get a loan, get a credit card, you can, all the things. You can get a mortgage, you can get a credit card, like really everything. You can have a checking account, all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, credit unions are going to be not going to be able to have as much money to spare to do more cool projects and things like offer new features and advancements like banks can. Another big reason why I chose not to bank with a credit union is because I feel like they oftentimes are very limited to like this specific community that they serve. So it could either be like a specific geographic location, like where you live, everybody in that area has access to this credit union, or it could be like military, if you have family in the military, or if you're in the military, you have access to this. It's for some reason that you share in common with all the other members. That's why you have access to financial services through the credit union. So because they're like that, oftentimes, not always, but a lot of times they're very geographically tight in terms of like where they are located, where the branches are located, where the ATMs are located. And so because of that, you end up paying fees using ATM machines if the ATM machines are not from that specific credit union or an affiliated credit union. And the reality is that just like banks have more money to do more online technological events and stuff and features on mobile and online banking, the same way that they have more money to have more locations and to have more ATMs. So because of that, it's more likely that if you have a bank, you're not going to worry about paying ATM fees as much as if you had a credit union. That's pretty much the major differences and the main reasons why I choose to bank with major banks. But I really do love credit unions and what they're all about. So if you do have a credit union, let me know which credit unions you guys use and what choices you made. Do you choose a bank? Did you choose a credit union? Are you trying to change your from your bank to your credit union? Because I notice a lot of people saying that they're thinking of changing to credit unions, but they just want to know a little bit more about it. So I would love to hear from you guys in the comments. And then if you have any questions that you want to reach out to me with, you can either call and leave a Google voice message for me, which I will then listen to and respond with a video, or you can email me at missbhelpful@gmail.com. You can find me on social media, which I am on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those places. And then, you can interact with me there as well. But that's all I have for you guys. So till next time, peace.